She sat in the center of the courtroom, back straight, hands cuffed, the steel biting into the wrists that once held a sniper rifle steady in the heat of war. Her uniform was crisp, her medals gleamed under the sterile lights, but the eyes around her didn't see the honor, only the accusation. You could hear a pin drop, judges whispered, prosecutors stared, the cameras were ready to make a meal out of her legacy, but she didn't flinch, not when the cuffs clicked shut, not when the murmurs grew louder. She just stared forward, like a warrior waiting for the next command. Then, the heavy doors creaked open, and an admiral walked in. Every head turned, every breath held, and in that frozen moment everything changed. Before she was a headline, before she was a courtroom mystery, she was just a little girl named Riley, standing barefoot on the roof of a rusted pickup truck in Alabama, saluting fighter jets as they ripped across the sky. Her dad was a mechanic, her mom a school nurse. They didn't have much, but they gave her one thing that mattered. Belief that she could serve, that she could protect, that she could be more. She told her teachers she wanted to be a Navy SEAL. They laughed. She told her coaches she wanted to shoot like the best snipers in the world. They chuckled, but her heart never wavered. She ran with a weighted vest before sunrise. She studied war strategy while others were out at prom. She trained, she bled, she kept going. At 18, she enlisted. At 24, after multiple rejections and one near medical discharge, she broke through. The first female in her SEAL unit, not because of quotas. Because of grit. The men didn't welcome her. They watched, waited for her to fail. But every time they dropped, she stood. Every time the mission called for silence, she became the quietest shadow. She could hold her breath longer, shoot farther, think faster. And when it came time to choose a sniper for a classified rescue mission across enemy lines, they chose her. Not because she was a woman, because she was the best. Her name became legend in whispers. The ghost with the steel eyes, they called her. She never missed, and she never left a man behind. But legends don't come without a cost. The mission that changed everything, it was supposed to be a routine recon in northern Syria. A silent extraction, no shots, no mess, but nothing in war goes according to plan. Intel was bad, civilians were in danger, and her team was ambushed. One of her brothers, in arms, lay bleeding out behind a crumbling wall. Her orders were to retreat, but orders didn't matter when lives were on the line. She disobeyed, slipped through enemy fire, took the shot that saved her team, and called in an airstrike that cleared the path to safety. Every man made it out alive, every man, except the one civilian she couldn't reach in time. One photo, one civilian. That's all it took for the storm to begin. Back home, it wasn't medals that waited for her. It was an investigation. A political figure, looking for a headline, claimed she acted recklessly, that she had gone rogue, that she had violated orders. They ignored her record. They ignored the lives she saved. They saw an opportunity to make a point. And suddenly, the girl who had served with honor, who had risked everything for her country, was labeled a liability. The court date was set. The world divided. And the handcuffs clicked shut. When the Admiral walked in, you could feel the air shift. 4 stars on his shoulder. A presence that quieted even the loudest thoughts. He didn't speak at first. He didn't need to. He walked past the lawyers, past the reporters, and stood. Right beside her, he turned to the judge. Then, finally, he spoke. I trained her. I watched her become more than any of us thought possible, and I ordered the mission that led her there. I reviewed every second of her helmet cam footage. She didn't break the code. She upheld it. She didn't betray her team. She saved it. And if honor still means anything in this room, then she doesn't belong in handcuffs. She belongs in history books. He slid a folder across the bench. Inside, classified footage, eyewitness accounts, testimonies from every SEAL on her team. Every one of them said the same thing. She disobeyed orders to save us. And then the real twist, the civilian she couldn't reach. He was already gone before she ever arrived. The accusation wasn't just wrong, it was built on a lie. A silence washed over the room. Then the judge spoke. Remove those cuffs. The guard stepped forward. The keys shook in his hand, And as the cuffs fell away, she didn't cry, she didn't speak, she simply stood up, lifted her chin, and saluted, not to the judge, not to the Admiral, but to the flag above them all. In a world quick to judge, quick to assume, quick to crucify before truth has time to breathe, some warriors stand taller than the noise. She was dragged into the spotlight, not for the medal she earned, but for a lie she didn't deserve. But she didn't flinch, because real heroes don't need approval. They just need the truth to catch up. Riley Carter walked out of that courtroom, not just cleared but celebrated. And while the headlines moved on, those who watched that day never forgot the moment an admiral stood for a sniper, and the world learned the difference between what the news says and what courage really looks like. Because sometimes the quietest soldier is the one who shakes the world. She didn't speak to the media. She didn't chase the spotlight. While the headlines buzzed and opinions screamed, she packed her things into a single green duffel and walked out of the courthouse like she had just left a war zone, not with bitterness, not with revenge, but with the quiet strength of someone who had nothing to prove anymore. Some called her a hero, some still whispered doubt, but she had learned a long time ago truth doesn't always roar. Sometimes it stands in silence and still wins. That night, while the world debated her innocence on talk shows and social feeds, she returned to the one place where noise never followed the edge of a lake back home in Alabama. Same rusted pickup truck, same sky, same girl, but now 1,000 battles behind her. Not all of them fought with a rifle, some were fought just to be believed. She stood there, staring at her reflection in the still water. The same hands that once gripped the cold steel of her weapon now trembled for the first time in years, not from fear, but from release. She had survived war, injustice, betrayal, and come out standing. But survival always leaves a scar no one else sees. They never saw the nights she couldn't sleep after missions, how the silence that once brought peace turned into echoes of the battlefield. They never saw the letters she wrote to the families of the men she couldn't save. They never heard the whispered apologies she told to herself in the dark for surviving when others didn't. They never knew about the time she almost left it all behind, when the weight of guilt and noise became louder than the mission. When she stood on the edge of a hotel balcony with tears in her eyes and one thought in her head, I did everything right, and they still broke me. But then, a call from a brother in her unit, Riley, if you leave, who will tell our story? And that was it. The voice she needed, the reminder she forgot, that her survival wasn't weakness, it was proof. Weeks after the trial, a letter arrived in the mail, no return address. Just one sentence written in careful script. Truth was never meant to die in silence. Come speak for those who can't. It was from a foundation helping veterans fight legal battles, the forgotten, the misjudged, the betrayed. They wanted her, not just for her story, but for her strength. And so began her new war, not on a battlefield, but in boardrooms and courtrooms, fighting for those who were wrongly accused, mentoring women who wanted to serve but had been turned away, teaching soldiers that healing isn't weakness, it's the next part of service. Every week, she visited VA hospitals. Every month, she trained new recruits in mental toughness, and every time she stood in front of a crowd, she didn't tell them she was a SEAL. She told them she was a survivor, because that title she earned in blood and silence. 1 year later, the Navy hosted a private ceremony. No press, no cameras, just men and women in uniform. The Admiral was there, this time not with evidence, but with honor. He stepped forward with a plaque. Not made of gold, just polished steel engraved with 6 words, the mission never broke her spirit. Tears welled in the eyes of even the toughest men in that room, because they weren't just celebrating her. They were reclaiming her. She was no longer the woman in cuffs. She was the warrior who rewrote the ending. When she was asked to speak, she stepped forward slowly, her voice calm, her heart steady. I didn't stand alone in that courtroom. I stood with every man and woman who ever sacrificed truth for duty, who ever gave all and got forgotten, who ever walked into fire, not for glory but for each other. I don't want applause. I don't want headlines. I just want the next soldier to know that no matter what the world says, your value is not up for debate. Today, she doesn't wear the uniform anymore, but she still wakes up before dawn, still sharpens her mind, still trains others to face storms. Because war may end on the battlefield, but the fight for justice, for dignity, for the soul of a soldier never really stops. And somewhere, in a classroom in Virginia, a young girl raises her hand and says, "I want to be like Riley Carter." The teacher doesn't laugh this time. Instead, she nods and hands her a book titled, "The Girl They Handcuffed, the Warrior They Couldn't Break." Because legends aren't born when you win, they're born when you refuse to surrender, when the cuff's close. But your spirit stays free when the world doubts you, but your story answers louder. When your scars become the bridge someone else walks across, that's who she became, not just a sniper, not just a soldier. But a voice, a symbol, a turning point, and that's why the courtroom froze that day. Not because a man with stars entered the room, but because the world finally saw that strength doesn't always wear armor. Sometimes it wears silence and survives anyway.